are now. Welcome back, everybody. Let's go ahead and continue on the sessions. This is where there's this little bit of conversion. We're going to start talking about conversion technologies and how they relate to agricultural plastics and what some of the opportunities might be out there. This particular session, Mark is going to run for us. I will make an announcement that we do have one presenter, unfortunately, that came down with COVID, so he's not going to be here, and that is David McCarthy. I will try to get with David after he recovers and record his presentation and then shoot that out to everybody, so at least everybody will get a chance to see it. So, sir, I'm going to let you drive the train. All yours.
All right. Hello again, everyone. So hope everyone had a chance to stretch, and if you're like me, actually go outside and get some fresh air. I tell you, I can't get enough of California's 77 degrees and no humidity when you're from the south and used to 95 degrees and what feels like 100% humidity this time of year. Well, I'm excited about this next session, and actually was part of why I volunteered to moderate this one. The subject is advanced or chemical recycling or conversion, and I know it's been touched on a number of times already today, so look forward to hearing from our next two presenters. And as Gene just said, David McCarthy's not able to be with us due to COVID, and so the good news for this session is that we will finish at 4:30 instead of at 5:30 or at 5 o'clock. So our first presenter this afternoon is Jean-Louis Kindler, J.L. Kindler, the CEO of Ways2H, and he will be speaking to us plastics to fuels and fuel feedstock opportunities. So, J.L.
Thank you, Mark, for this introduction. Yes, I usually go by JL. It's probably making everyone's life easier here. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be talking live and actually being able to meet people, because this is something we haven't been doing for quite some time now. I will tell you about this extremely deceiving presentation, because what you see here is plastics to fuel and fuel. I'm actually going to specifically talk about hydrogen. Of course, hydrogen is a fuel, but really specifically what we do, what our company does, is engineer, build, and deliver systems that take waste, including plastic, and this is why I'm here today, and convert this waste into a big, beautiful flow of pure hydrogen that we can use in cars, that we can use in generators, that we can use in everything that moves or that generates electricity. What you see here on this illustration is an illustration, obviously. It's not a photo, but it actually is taken from a very, very early prototype of this technology that was deployed in Germany some 25 years ago. And really the point here is to show that what we like to do is something that is decentralized. Actually, this one is in the middle of a city. I know you are more interested in what's happening in the middle of the fields, but it actually is really important to realize that being decentralized is a good way to limit the extremely high cost of logistics, both in the transportation of waste, but also in the transportation of hydrogen. Hydrogen, lots of naysayers are saying, hydrogen is very expensive and it's very expensive to move around. Well, yes, it is. Although the industry is making a lot of progress about that, about compressing hydrogen and making it easier to move from point A to point B. But still, if we can produce hydrogen locally and use it locally, either through a dispensing system or sending it into a generator, it obviously is a significant saving. So first, when we talk about waste to fuel, well, we will talk about waste. I don't think you will be learning a lot from this slide. We actually have about 8 billion tons of plastic on Earth that have been produced and gradually leaking well, not in the atmosphere, but on the ground and in the ocean. And that plastic, I think it was Jasmine, was it you who, earlier who was talking about the plastic that can actually be found in our body? This is microplastics, right? So this is horrible, but this is reality. We do have plastic everywhere because we're producing about 300 million tons of plastic per year, and we are only recycling a fraction of that. So the rest of it goes to landfills, goes to the ocean, goes to our bodies. Anyway, it's not really being taken care of. And I was talking about landfills. There is a total of about 2 billion tons of waste going to landfills per year. That includes about roughly 20% plastic. The rest of it is biogenic and is also metals. But what's important to realize, and it's a hint for the next slide, is that those 2 billion tons of waste, it's the equivalent of about, in terms of energy value, it's the equivalent of about 50% of the gasoline being used during the same period in a year on that whole planet. So it's a significant source of energy that currently we're not using and that we are partially transforming into methane, sending that into our atmosphere, making San Diego actually particularly pleasant because it's probably the only place on Earth where the temperature is so nice and so cool. So what do we do with this waste? We transform it and we make hydrogen out of it. We actually started developing this technology some 20 years ago at a time where talking about hydrogen was making us look like basically coming from planet Mars. Nobody was really interested in the potential of hydrogen, but this is changing a lot. See this curve here. This is the expected hydrogen demand curve in Europe. And see this other curve here, we're talking about California only. And this is really happening. It's happening now. Although there are some articles, there was one this morning yesterday, in the Los Angeles Times saying, hydrogen is not that renewable, it's not such a great solution. Well, right now it is not because most of hydrogen is being produced out of fossil origins, but all this expected demand, future demand, that is actually starting to be built now, will be renewable hydrogen. And the California Energy Commission is expecting at, let's say, at around 2040, is expecting hydrogen production infrastructure to be half based on what is called green hydrogen, which is hydrogen produced out of electrolysis powered by renewable electricity, and the other half being hydrogen produced through thermochemical conversion using waste or biomass as a source. So why would we do that? Well, first, because we need a lot of renewable electricity just for our grid. We do see a lot of situations now with those climate events where the energy agencies are warning us of potential peak in consumption, resulting in, well, power shortages. And it's happening now that only a fraction of our power source is renewable. So we still need to build our renewable source, our renewable electricity sources. And we also need to add renewable electricity sources because we are using more and more battery electric vehicles. And then because we are also planning to produce hydrogen from electricity, from renewable electricity. Well, the solutions we propose have a dual benefit. They produce renewable hydrogen. And more than that, they also help and contribute solving our waste problem, of course, including the ag waste problem. I'm talking about plastic, but not only plastic, because every farmer, every ag operation has a problem with plastics, but also has a problem with the biogenic waste that they are generating. So, and of course, solving waste means that we help diverting this waste from incineration in major parts of this country or landfills, particularly in California, because we do not have a lot of incinerators here in California. Hydrogen is important. Even in a world where we will have more and more battery electric vehicles, hydrogen is important because first you can fill your tank in about 5 minutes, just like what you do with the gasoline. And batteries are great. I'm a big fan of battery electric vehicles, although I'm driving a gas guzzler. But batteries will not help solving all the transportation issues. We need heavy-duty transportation. I'm talking about trucks. We need, and that also relates to trucks, we need to be able to carry goods over long distances. And for those, batteries will not be able to do the job. Or they may be able to do the job, but they're probably not the best solution. And also, hydrogen is a great way to store electricity, to store energy, because, well, you compress it, and you can keep it almost as long as you want. So really, hydrogen is important, and it makes sense for all sorts of applications, urban mobility, of course, but also more generally speaking, any kind of clean transportation solutions that we also need in our countryside. The Central California Valley is actually one of the most polluted areas in the country. It's not because there are so many cars. It's because of the particles that are emitted by the trucks, and also somehow because of some ag and pesticide activity. But this is another story, and I don't want to get into this debate here. Someone would probably kill me here. So how do we do this? So as I said, it's a waste to hydrogen solution. What you see here is a photo of our latest baby that was born in April this year, and that is deployed, at this point it's deployed in Tokyo on a wastewater treatment plant, where we process sewage sludge, and we smoothly and nicely extract hydrogen out of this. I said earlier it is a technology that has been developed over a good 20 years. What you can see are the small photos. You don't really need to see the details, but those photos are the 4 successive pilots that were built before this system. And those systems really have some specific features in terms of technology that I will be happy to go in detail about, maybe in private, because for a lot of you it would be extremely boring. But one of their really key features is that they can be deployed in small size solutions. Again, we want to decentralize this activity. So this unit that you can see here on the large photo is able to process about 1 ton per day of dry waste, and out of this we'll produce approximately 50 kilograms of hydrogen, which is the equivalent of 10 passenger vehicles fuel tanks. You'll tell me it's not much, I agree, but it's also a lot actually, because 1 ton waste is something that is easily generated, either within the community or within an industry. And I consider a farm being an industry. The typical standard solution is a little bigger than that. We have a design for a system that processes 25 tons per day of waste, and out of this we will produce 1.5 tons hydrogen. That's 300 vehicles. So it's, to give you an idea, it's the equivalent of what an average gasoline stand is servicing today in the US. Feedstock. Feedstock obviously is important. If we don't have feedstock, we don't have hydrogen. This system initially was developed as a way to process construction waste, biomass, and municipal solid waste. But it obviously, and municipal solid waste actually is kind of complicated to process. Lots of solutions that are slightly equivalent to ours have actually miserably failed. There has been a lot of horror stories about gasification of municipal solid waste because municipal solid waste is a highly inconsistent feedstock that changes in quality, and therefore that has a direct impact on the process. Our solution is the best, of course. Our solution, more seriously, is much more flexible in terms of the kind of feedstock it can accept. And it actually is more flexible in terms of feedstock quality variation. Nevertheless, it's always easier to process predictable feedstocks. And so the idea here, for example, is to have a mix, for example, of municipal solid waste together with some industrial waste. And again, here, when I say industrial, I talk about all sorts of different industries, including the ag industry, farming. Because, for example, we are talking today with operators again, in the Central California Valley, who have access to almost limitless feedstock in terms of biomass coming from farming operation, packaging waste. I actually have not heard about film or mulch film, but I suspect it is something that will be coming. And this is an absolutely perfect feedstock for our solution that, again, because it is decentralized, will not be too costly because that feedstock will be processed locally. And obviously, just like there is a need for hydrogen in urban transportation, there potentially is a need for hydrogen in with all the farming equipment. I should actually have put this slide here because it is definitely very urban. But what's important to realize here is that location is extremely important. And when we process municipal solid waste, we would install and deploy our solution near or on transfer stations or recycling yards. But there is actually the most important is probably the logistics around hydrogen. And for that, well, there is a big portion of the high five that is, again, in Central California Valley. But I'm not talking about only about California. On highways in the US are usually passing through huge farmland. And those highways today, not today, but tomorrow, they will need hydrogen filling stations. And this is exactly what we are thinking about, deploying our hydrogen production solutions nearby where a hydrogen filling station will be installed. I don't think I'm breaking a state secret here, but the truck company, fuel cell truck company, Nikola, has announced their intention to deploy 700 hydrogen filling stations throughout the country. Well, I'm pretty sure that a significant fraction of those stations will be, if not on farmland, well, they will be very close to farmland. And they will need feedstock. They will need that hydrogen, and they will need that hydrogen to be produced locally, again, for cost reasons. So I hate calling this solution gasification because the word gasification has some kind of bad press, but still, it is gasification. So, but I'd prefer calling this thermochemical conversion. I only have 5 minutes left, right? Okay. Well, so this is what we do. We typically use feedstock that needs to be shredded. And actually, there's not much more preparation than shredding and well, taking out inerts. And out of this, we extract hydrogen. We need a little bit of electricity, typically about 1/4, 1/5 of the energy value of the hydrogen that we are producing. So, and we have a system that is fully sustainable. We use the carbon that is contained in the feedstock to generate the heat that is needed to extract the hydrogen also contained in feedstock. So we have a self-sustainable solution that does generate CO2. I think I have to break this secret. But this CO2, because we usually use feedstocks that contain biogenic matter, this CO2 is short cycle and therefore does not contribute increasing greenhouse gas in the atmosphere. This is, well, the illustration of what I was telling you earlier. With about 24 tons per day of dry basis feedstock, we will produce about 1.5 tons hydrogen. That's between 250 and 300 vehicles. And speaking of applications, and I'll probably stop here after that, but speaking of applications, we talk about hydrogen as a fuel, but hydrogen is also a very, very interesting fuel for power generation. And this is where being decentralized is also extremely helpful. You see this photo here. This is in northern Canada. And what this is a road that has been melting due to climate change. And what happens when the road melts? Well, the fuel, the diesel oil that is being sent to the northern communities that need that oil for their power generation, well, the fuel has to be carried via helicopter. Isn't it nice? So this is, of course, an extreme example, but what we're talking about here is being able to offer a solution for communities that are either off-grid or that want to rely on their own resources. And there are communities like that, for example, in the Pacific Northwest. They're not off-grid, but when there is a wildfire, suddenly power is being cut. They still have their waste. Well, we can use that waste as a way for them to generate their own energy. This is the epitome of circular economy. And also because there are some types of waste, we were talking about plastic. A lot of plastic is being recycled, but when I say a lot, it's only about 10% of the whole plastic being produced on Earth. So those 90%, well, give them to me, because this is the kind of plastic that I can extract hydrogen from. On that one, I talked about being decentralized, so you already know everything about this. And very quickly, who we are a small company. We are a startup. The company was created in 2019, but we are a young company with an old technology, again, 20 years development. What we do is engineer, build, and we deliver systems, turnkey systems, to operators who will make a lot of money getting tipping fees from the waste that they are processing and selling hydrogen to more and more users. And the systems we sell, they process between 8 and 48 tons per day of waste, producing a lot of hydrogen. And those systems are available now. We are taking orders. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, JL. Any questions for JL?
What's the, how much hydrogen is used in the marketplace at this time?
Today's market for hydrogen is, there's about 70 million tons hydrogen being produced today. Half of it goes to refineries for crude oil refining to remove the sulfur from crude oil, and the other half goes to ammonia processing. There's obviously, actually in the decentralization slide I was showing, there's about 50 hydrogen filling stations today in the US, about 100 in Japan, about 130 in Europe. So hydrogen production for transportation is slowly starting, but we're getting there. And that hydrogen will be renewable.
Hi, for your process, it looked like you had outputs. You mentioned that you would have carbon dioxide as one of the emissions, but is there any kind of physical, like an ash or something that's left over too, or is it completely made into fuel?
I really have to apologize. I couldn't understand.
Oh, is there anything, is there another waste output? Is there like ash or anything left over from the process?
There's ash.
Okay.
There's ash. So minerals are, and we actually have some prospects who are more interested in extracting what comes out of the ash than of the hydrogen, but that's another story.
So I hadn't heard that term of short cycle CO2.
Yes.
So like there's good CO2 and bad CO2. Can you elaborate?
Oh, yes. Well, about 300 million years ago, there was about 25, 30% CO2 in the atmosphere. That helped a lot of vegetables, microalgae, green organisms to grow, including trees. And all these, well, a lot of these, while pumping the CO2 from the atmosphere, grew and grew and grew and grew and became our beautiful coal and our beautiful crude oil. And while doing that, they brought CO2 concentration down to about 250 ppm in the atmosphere. And then we started taking out that coal, burning it. We took out that crude oil. We also burned it. And we are now at about, I think, 450, 470 ppm and rising. The big difference between short cycle CO2 and bad CO2 is that the short cycle CO2 was in the atmosphere 2 years ago, 3 years ago, maybe 10 years ago or 20. So using this CO2 and releasing it back into the atmosphere does not increase the overall content, the overall level of CO2 in the atmosphere. The one that does increase that level is the one that comes from oil and coal being burned. It's a bit like, I have tried this metaphor once and I miserably failed, but I will try again. Think of it, think of the CO2 level in the atmosphere as water in a sink with the faucet going, with the faucet open and the drain. And this is quite stable until you start taking out coal or oil and burn it. When you start doing that, you actually increase. It's like if you open more the water level, and then suddenly it rises. So we have two solutions. Either we draw more, we open the drain more, or we turn the faucet. What we're trying to do here is, well, keep the water and use the water directly from the sink, and possibly, because we are emitting CO2, and this is something that's also very important, and I'll stop here because I think we need to leave some space for the other people. But connecting our solution to a carbon sequestration system means that we can literally become carbon negative, and this is where it becomes exciting, because this is where we can literally not only merely stop the increase of CO2 in the atmosphere, but reverse that and decrease CO2 in the atmosphere.
One more question? Got one right behind you, right beside you.
What kind of footprint are you looking at for your facility?
24 tons per day processing capacity lies on 90 feet by 90 feet. That does not include the waste pre-processing and the storage yard, which will depend on seasonality. So of course, if we get a big pile of mulch film once a year, we probably will need to have some space for this, but well, it will be a case-by-case engineering.
Okay, and then transport the hydrogen, I mean, so you're gonna store it on site and then look to transport it to fueling stations or users?
Correct. We purify hydrogen and compress it on site. We compress it to the level that will be required by our off-taker, or I would say by our client's off-taker. Ideally, there will be no logistics and the filling station will be on site.
All right. Thanks very
Thank
much
you.
to JL. Appreciate it, JL. So our next presenter is Tom Hockin with Brightmark Energy. Tom is the National Director of Origination and Feedstock. And Tom will be speaking about Brightmark Energy, a new end market for mixed plastics. Thank you, Tom.
Take off my mask here. Well, JL, that was a great presentation. I look forward to talking to you more about that. Very interesting. So I guess just before I get started, I wanted to, Gene, thank you for inviting Brightmark. This is our first time speaking at this conference. It's a lot of fun to be back out in front, with everybody. I think it's just so uplifting to be with like-minded people who are all together, and we're all, in our own little lives trying to solve this plastic problem. It's fun when we get together and have these conferences. And also to be amongst a group, recyclers by definitions are problem solvers, but all of us in this room are trying to solve problems, and that's fun. But we've certainly got a big task in front of us. So, and it's really cool to see the different technologies that are coming into the market to solve these problems. So, very excited to talk to you a little bit more about what we're doing at Brightmark and how we're trying to solve some major problems as well. Now, I just want to maybe preface this. Here we are at the APRC, and we're talking about agricultural plastics. And I'm not here to say that we ultimately have the silver bullet. I mean, ultimately, Brightmark is an end market for these plastics, and we're doing all kinds of interesting things with the different technologies that we have and the development projects that we're working on. But it's going to continue to take us, and my primary goal and interest, frankly, is to understand from all of you and to learn more about the supply chain and how it works and how it's going to evolve to be able to, we've talked about it a million times. I think everybody's talked about it today, get contamination and moisture and everything to make a good feedstock for these different technologies. So that's something that I think we're going to have to continue working on. So I'm going to go, my presentation sort of broken into two sections. It's kind of just more of a generic, what is Brightmark and what is it that we do? So I want to walk through that, and I'm going to do that with the assistance of a video. And then the second part, I'd like to get more into the practical of talking a little bit more about agricultural plastics and what that means. So, here's my controller. All right. So we're a very mission-driven company at Brightmark. We're really on a mission to imagine waste. So what does that mean? We're really focused on, you can only choose so many problems to solve. I think the key items that you see on this slide, we've probably seen it on other slides, which is the plastic problem. I don't need to tell everybody here in the plastic recycling industry about the plastic problem, but these are the things that we see, and what we tell the market in general about our organization is, really only 9% of plastics are getting recycled. Mechanical recycling, without a doubt, is the top of the sustainability pyramid. We're not here to compete with that. We're here to greater facilitate mechanical recycling. So that's just an important message. I want everybody to understand when they start looking at folks like Brightmark, who would be considered, Lisa, maybe to do a different term, which is we're now called advanced recycling, not chemical recycling. Just that's a new evolution that's come from the American Chemistry Council, where we're now considered advanced recycling. So that's when we think of Brightmark. Hopefully you think of us as advanced recyclers. So the other major problems here that we're tackling too are on the side of our business, which is the renewable natural gas side of our business. We're really focused on methane capture and GHG emissions there. And then, really a burgeoning part of that anaerobic digestion side of our business and the RNG side is also inorganics. And, these are big problems to solve. We think that we've got some good pathway for both of them. So when you think about Brightmark, we've got two sides of our business. Here we are talking about, within the agricultural industry scope. We, within our organization, half of our organization is focused on renewable natural gas, and we're out working on farms every day, and we've got projects all over the country on farms doing methane capture. And so maybe just to start on the right side, we do have various different RNG facilities across the country, 29 different farms, so we're out working in that environment every day. We have significant goals to offset, 22 million metric tons by 2025. And really the driver and the products that we're producing there are, LCFS credits and RINs for renewable natural gas. Now, coming back to the plastic side, we have a proprietary technology, which is a form of pyrolysis. So pyrolysis has now become like a category, right? Advanced recycling, I guess, as it were. But advanced recycling includes all sorts of other technologies as well. But our form of technology is pyrolysis. We have a facility that is going to be commercialized here in the fourth quarter. Extremely exciting. It's the largest of its kind in the world. It's going to do 100,000 tons per year. It's located in Ashley, Indiana, and I'm about to show you a video a little bit more about that project. We have very sort of specific stated goals where we're looking to divert 8.4 million metric tons of plastic from landfills and waterways by 2025. And then, increasing along the way our circularity goals there. So the products that we create on this side of the business are really, wax, naphtha, ultra low sulfur diesel, and then we put plastic there in the end. It's more of just kind of a reminder. Naphtha itself is a building block for plastic resins, and therefore, the more naphtha we can produce, the more circular we can go straight back into plastics. So it's very important for you to think people want plastics to go back into plastics. To be circular, and that's fine. And certainly from our perspective, that's really what the naphtha cut is able to do. So I'm going to get into plastics, our plastics technology, but there's no better way to explain it by letting a bunch of kids do it. So I'm going to show you a video. It takes a few minutes, but hopefully that'll be a welcome departure from. We've seen a lot of slides today, so we can watch some cute kids explain this process. And I think the star of the show is a 7-year-old, and when I was 7, all there was to know was known. So you'll see that this kid obviously knows a lot. So I'll let this video tell the story of what we do here at Brightmark.
My name is June. I'm 7 years old. Wow. I know a lot about dinosaurs. I know all their names. Brachiosaurus, Brontosaurus. Sometimes I forget.
So our family is probably larger than average. We have 5 kids.
It's a lot of kids. Like most families, we use a lot of plastic. Tupperware, toys, car seats, packaging, so much packaging. It's everywhere.
By the time I'm my dad's age, like in 30 years, there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish. It makes me feel bad. I don't really want plastic to be all over the place. If there's no plastic in the ocean than fish, you could find plastic in your food.
We used to wonder what plastics we can and couldn't recycle until we moved to Ashley, Indiana, and my husband started work at Brightmark.
My daddy works at Brightmark. He's an engineer, and today I got to see where my daddy works.
So my kids have still not seen where I work, and actually most people haven't because we just finished building it. Okay guys, why don't you choose a plastic toy that we can take with us, and we'll put it in there so we can turn it back into oil, all right? So Ashley it's a very small town, and up till now it may be the most famous for having a big, bright, yellow, smiley face water tower. But now it has the largest and most high-tech plastics renewal facility in the entire world.
I am excited. I've never been to my dad's work before.
I talked to them a little bit about what I'm doing at work, but it's kind of hard to convey the scale.
I thought it was really big, all of the giant machines. And I saw plastic get turned back into oil. I learned that plastic comes from oil, made from plants that existed before dinosaurs. Way before. And it takes a ton of energy. Tons and tons. And then people just throw it away like it's trash. But it's not. And it's actually a way to turn plastic back into oil. Brightmark can take all plastic away. Plastic toys and dinosaurs, straws and styrofoam, you name it, even my crayons.
We're able to accept all kinds of plastic that is commingled. Doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's a game changer.
So my sister brought a Lego board with Legos on it, and my brother brought a Lego dino, and I brought a real toy. I put it on conveyor belt. First, it went low, then it started going up, and into a grinder, and it chopped up my dinosaur, and it grinded it up. But it's okay, because it's not a real dinosaur. It's just toys. And and then it goes through this fancy thing that has roll-up laser eyes. And it can tell if the wrong bit of plastic is there and shoots it right out of the bar.
It's a near-infrared sorter. It has a special eye, and it can see if it's stuff that we don't want.
Because there's a little eye, a special eye, and if it saw something that wasn't plastic, it would shoot it out with energy. Pew! Yeah. Pew, boom, boom.
So yeah, it shoots out the plastic, you know, out of the stream, and it's fun to watch.
And the white plastic is to get chopped up more peaceful. And it goes into the metal drum, and then they open it up, and it got to see inside. And there were lots of little holes, and that's where all that plastic gets pressed into these teeny tiny little pellets that had lots of color. There was this big tube, they were just rain pellets. And then it makes a big hill of all that stuff. There were tons of pellets. Tons and tons of the whole hill. The pellets were kind of like rabbit groups. And I got to climb the hill. Felt like kind of climbing a mountain. I didn't do very much because I have holes in my shoes.
The pellets get put into giant steel vessels that they're airtight. We heat it up, and it goes through a process that we've perfected called pyrolysis.
Pyrolysis? I think it's a pyrolysaurus. Pyrolysaurus. Wow. I heated all those pellets up very hot. It smells a crackle, crackle. And there's no air in there, so the plastic doesn't burn. Which is important because then no yucky, toxic stuff gets put into the air. And all the plastic turns into gas, and it gets collected in all these tubes and stuff. And then there's more super secret sciencey stuff that makes really cool sounds like blub, blub, blub. Bloop, 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 bloop. And then the plastic turns back into oil. And can make whatever they want from it. Fuel and wax. And eventually they're going to turn it back into plastic. We're still working on that. It's pretty hard.
We're working to take this waste plastic and turn it all the way into clean new plastic to go fully circular.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. My dad's work has like super top secret patterns. You can't even tell me about it. Sometimes he tries to, but I don't understand any of this stuff.
So we have a patented process that makes this 3 times more efficient than other pyrolysis processes.
This is the biggest thing of its kind in the world, for sure. They're gonna take 100,000 tons of plastic a year and turn it into 18 million gallons of fuel that can power trucks and other things, and 6 million gallons of wax that can make candles and stuff. And it probably costs $60 gazillion, which is a lot.
This is the world's largest plastic renewal facility. We have plans to expand worldwide, and our next ones are going to be even bigger, up to 4 to 8 times bigger. That's really exciting. It's going to change the world.
I think it's cool because you can turn garbage into real things by putting it just in recycling. So if you have a broken toy, you can throw it in recycling and it will come back into a different kind of toy, which is important because then we keep plastic from going into landfills, incinerators, and our oceans, reducing greenhouse gas, which will help us from going extinct, like the dinosaurs.
My dad is actually a chemical engineer as well. I got to go into work with my dad on occasion. It wasn't that often, but I always remembered the experiences that I had. You know, I care about what the world's going to be like when they grow up. We realize here at Brightmark that, we still need to reduce our reliance on single-use plastic. It's everywhere. But also there's high-quality plastics that at some point they're going to be discarded, and something needs to be done about that. I am optimistic about the future. These are problems, but they're problems that we can solve.
Our future will depend on the mark you make. Let's make it right.
It's nice to let the kids be helpful for once and do something for you. So I do like that video because I think it really does a good job of conveying the story that we're trying to tell, but and help walk you through our process. But it also helps you to see our Ashley facility. We're real. We're building this project. Our first project. We've got other projects that are in the pipeline, so it's very exciting. So I think now's the time. I only have a couple slides left, but 6 or 7 minutes. Okay. Okay. So essentially what we do, I just want to kind of walk through what happens at Ashley. I mean, I think you saw most of it, but we're effectively taking in mixed materials. We are not currently geared at this moment to be able to take, you know, things like agricultural film to remove the amount of, you know, sand and soiling and the amount of moisture. So that's something we need to work on within the supply chain and to try to figure out ways to do that. And I'm not just talking about ground cover. I'm talking about, you know, everything from, you know, from tiles to trays to, you know, everything else. So certainly very interested. We want a lot of feedstock. So we want to be active in this space, within the industry. So as you saw, we're doing shredding, we're doing processing, and then we're doing new products. There's a lot of focus on that presentation in terms of oil. To us, really what that means hydrocarbon liquids, then we can then use that, and then we can refine those into then separating them into the naphtha cut, the ultra-low diesel product that we produce today, as well as the waxes. So these are just a couple of high levels. You've already gotten to see Ashley. You know, it is, I guess, the largest of its kind in the world doing this type of volume of this type of mixed plastics. So it's pretty exciting to be part of that. And you know, certainly the impact of the greenhouse gas emissions avoided there. So now, just taking this a little bit more to the practical level, you know, we're certainly, we can accept all mixed plastics at our facility. So we can take 1s through 7s. Some are created better than others for our process, those being the polyolefins, so that being the 2s, 4s, 5s, and 6s. So that being the ethylenes, the propylenes, and the styrenes. So our process is, you know, our nameplate on our process is about 93% efficient. And, you know, energy conversion in terms of energy intensity, it's about, you know, less than 10% in terms of the amount of energy that we're actually producing. We have now stated goals as an organization to be doing more circularity. And so that's taking more of that oil that I talked about and doing more with our naphtha and the circularity of all the products that we're producing with the liquids that come out of our pyrolysis process. So we've got some pretty lofty stated goals. So where are we? So we're in Ashley today. Oh, that was interesting. Sorry, how do I go back? Oh, that's interesting. My map didn't come up. So if anybody can figure out what states those are. So we're in Indiana, obviously. That's the first one. And then the second one is in Georgia. So that's odd. I don't know what happened to. Oh, maybe you can. I can see it down here on this slide, but it's a little grayed out. So we recently announced our second major project, which is going to be in Macon, Georgia. That's slated to do 400,000 tons per year of plastics. This is a lot of plastics. You know, we are at the stage of our development where we ultimately need to identify partners and pathways for all of these waste plastics to be under contract, and we need to get them contracted now before we ultimately go into the financing of these projects. If you've seen some of the releases in terms of the capital intensity of these projects, you know, they require us to certainly have our capacity allocated to good partners and to be able to have that supply identified. So even though these facilities may not come online until, well, certainly the Ashley facility is coming online right now, but the second phase of that, you know, and the Macon project, you know, we're looking a couple years out before they'll be fully operational. However, we do need to, you know, lock up our feedstock supply now. So there's a very hard push to make sure that we've got that locked up. So we're focused on April 1st next year, which is kind of our closing date of making sure that we've got all of our partnerships and our supplies locked up. So, okay, let's see. Oh, sorry, am I going the wrong direction? I think I am. Okay. Okay. And so, you know, looking ahead in the next 5 years, you know, we have these lofty goals. We've talked about the 8.4 million metric tons of plastic from landfills and from the environment. You know, and obviously we want to produce circular feedstocks and remake plastics, which, you know, will certainly help us to close the loop. So, thank you.
All right, thank you, Tom. Questions for Tom?
Hang on, man.
If you could go back to the slide before the video. Oh, one more, yep, right there. Okay, so you have the goal is 8.4 million tons of plastic. I'm assuming that's million?
8.4 million metric tons.
Okay, so what you've declared is that at this point, 100,000 for Ashley and 400 for Georgia. How do you get to 8.4 million tons from half a million?
Other projects.
Pardon?
Other projects.
Other projects. Okay.
I was just questioning how clean, from a mulch film perspective. I know you said you can't take mulch film, but how clean does plastic need to be? Obviously, there's contaminants even from your curbside plastics and things like that. So how clean does plastic need to be to work in your process?
Yeah, I mean, I had this question earlier today. It's a little easier for us to see how clean the process can get the plastics than for me to say it needs to be X percentage. Now, in terms of moisture, we'd like to see those moisture levels below 10, 8% would be ideal. But with respect to soiling, that's a little harder to pinpoint. So, as we work with processors who can take different plastics and process them for us, we'll just have to sort of iterate and evaluate. Yeah, I'm sorry I can't be more prescriptive than that. It's a good question.
Theron took my question, Tom. Yeah, you're at an agricultural plastic conference. What agricultural plastics can you take? But curious if you could elaborate at all on, are you developing partnerships, et cetera, to get to that cleaning step to be able to take agricultural plastics?
Gene's going to solve it all for us.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well then.
Yeah. No, but Tanis, no. In all seriousness, no. I mean, look, there's the whole film piece, that has largely been, been pioneered by the folks at Revolution, and that's sort of interesting to follow how they've been able to do what they're doing. But we're looking for the market to help us. All we can provide is the end market and the desire to be, to intake these materials and provide a specification. And we're hoping that the market can come and bring solutions to us. So I guess more specifically, in terms of the things that we want to look at, we want to look at the films. We want to look at the ground cover. We want to look at the drip tape. We want to look at, everything from greenhouse films, which is a little cleaner. Some other folks are probably interested in that too. But we're looking at, tiles, trays, runs the gamut. So again, because we're not just polypropylene only and we're not just film only, we're sort of interested in everything. But again, it's going to come down to making sure that we can get within the bands of the right contamination levels and work within the supply chain to try to get there.
I'll ask a question real quick before we go to the next one. So you mentioned, I guess it was 400,000 tons for the Georgia plant. Can you talk a little bit about the cost equation around getting 400,000 tons of plastic to that facility? Does Brightmark a part of that cost equation? Is that all through either public or private enterprise that's whether it's from MRFs or whomever to get the plastic to you? How does that work?
Yeah, so it's an important question, and I'm glad you asked it. And I mean, everybody's got to figure out the economics that are going to work for them. But I don't have NDAs with all of you, so I can't share my price scheme with everybody. But I will say generically, we're not out there competing for post-industrial polypropylene HDPE for the super pure streams. We're really much more on the low end, right? So think of us in terms of like the B, C grade film type price range. I mean, that's kind of more where we're at. Really where it makes sense is where, just from a pure economic standpoint, not when if you factor in the sustainability piece, it's a wholly different conversation. But when you factor in landfill costs and the whole avoided landfill piece, avoided, and making sure that what we're going to pay for it, plus that avoided cost, less the transfer cost to get those materials to us, then the economic proposition is accretive to anybody who's a supplier. Yeah.
You had mentioned roughly 8 to 10% moisture in terms of ag film possibly being an issue. What about, even in these 3 through 7s or other films you might have that have moisture just from, a bottle's got moisture in it, and also maybe from being stored outside in the rain and those sort of things? Do you have any issues with some of those materials?
I mean, I'm going to give you the same it's the same moisture content for all materials. Some of them are going to dry, faster than others. We do have the ability to do some drying at our facility, but at the gate, when we're at the unloading dock, we do expect those numbers that I was mentioning. So whether it's film, it's harder on film, right? It's harder to get there with film. But with rigids and so on, moist rigids, it's a little easier given some time. I don't know am I answering your question there, Ted, or yeah?
The video, kind of shows, dinosaur toys, Legos, everything. That's all thrown in there.
If you brought dinosaur toys, I'd be happy to take them.
I've got 5 kids, so I've got plenty of toys that I'd love to get rid of.
Still in use.
Just question on, the feedstock that you are looking for. I mean, are you going to the MRFs and wanting it from them, or it sounds like you do have a little bit of a narrow bandwidth of what you can and can't take, but like paint on bumpers, recycled bumpers and stuff like that. I mean, you guys are obviously doing some shredding, it looks like, at the facility. What's the form factor that you're looking to get in it? Is this mixed regrinds, or what's ideal there?
Sorry, there's about 11 questions in there, but I think where you're going. Well, let me answer it this way. So, and we can always talk offline, because this is sort of the purpose of this conversation, is to create a bit of the interest. But you need to talk to me in detail, and we can go through and iterate in terms of these different materials. Of course, we're looking at it. Probably about 50% is going to be PCR, and 50% is going to be PIR. So I think where we do a really great job in terms of like making ourselves available to the market is like for tough stuff, like co-extruded films and things that are mixed, mixed materials that are coming in that just simply can't be separated or are too expensive to separate, and that's kind of on the post-industrial side. On the on the MRF side, I mean, you can run the gamut. I mean, it sounds like you've probably been to many MRFs yourself. I mean, I've been in more than 30 of them, and that not one of them is the same, and not one of their end materials is the same. So while we think the world is just a perfect set of 3 through 7 bales and A-grade film, but it's not as perfect as that. So we need to work closely with them just to make sure that they can meet our spec, and a lot of that has to do with source level work, and but in terms of some of the other more complicated stuff, I would say broadly, we have an extremely flexible system. I mean, we can take a lot of stuff into our process, and that's really the benefit that we're bringing to this whole sustainability message, and working, to support mechanical recycling. Mechanical recycling is the best, right? But it has its limitations, and so we're here to sort of, sorry, didn't mean to do that. But we're here to sort of like fill everything underneath that, and to make sure that less of those plastics only have landfill as an option.
Curious, does that segregation that you just described, will that take place at your suppliers or your sources, or will that take place at your gate, or like by your process?
We'll see. I mean, for now, once we go through and share with you, some of the details of what our whatever detailed specifications are, we have to figure that out. There are certain feedstocks that are abundant, that are interesting, and we're contemplating whether that's something that we should be able to accept and be able to handle and be able to do more separation and treatment. So we're working sort of both sides, whatever's most economic for the supplier, and whatever we see big picture is going to allow us to get more feedstock.
One or two more questions?
I just want to ask for the feedstock. Normally, most of the pyrolysis people use PEPP. I don't know in this instance whether you can take like PET, engineering plastic there with contamination of additive. And this is my first question. Second is about 8.4 million tons. To me, this sounds in a very, very big quantity. I think the whole world, at one point, the export of waste altogether globally, maximum at that moment a few years ago, it was about slightly more than 10 million tons. So this 8.4 million tons to me sounds like very, very big quantity in terms of like almost like 250,000 of containers. So I just don't see logistic-wise whether how these things going to be facilitate the transport of all this waste.
Yeah. So it sort of snaps on to the earlier question that this gentleman asked here in terms of our goals. I mean, we're looking at projects not just domestically here in the United States. We're looking at projects internationally. So there's that piece, right? So in different markets. I think your first question just around PET, I mean, we can't really afford to pay for PET, and the market sort of takes care of that for us anyways. But you know, it does have oxygen content in it, and we're operating in an anaerobic environment, and so by definition that means it's diluting then the potential yield of all the other olefins that are mixed in with what what's in our process, right? So so we can accept PET, we'll treat it, you know, but we frankly don't see a lot of it. I mean, it's mixed in, you know, you're going to get it mixed in, but we're going to get it, and we can remove a little bit of it.
So ideally, how many percent of PEP? So what you try to say is you actually need PEP, polyolefin, with your pyrolysis. And do you have a number? For example, you must have at least 70% of them, because we also have like styrenic materials. We also have different kind of engineering plastics from the V scrap or E scrap.
Yeah. We do have yield targets.
Okay, so it would be like percentage-wise, you need to have at least 67% or 80% in order to have the
I'm not going to state what the percentage is here, but yes, we do have a percentage, a minimum sort of threshold. Exactly. Yeah.
So I have two questions. The first question is, did you hire Jude to be your director of sales from now on?
He's been on the red carpet within the company already, so yeah, he's pretty popular. So yeah, he's now head of sales.
He's great. So my second question, it's for both of you, for JL as well, just with both of your companies is diverting trash in plastic and recyclables from landfills and the waterways. Do any of your companies ever vision being actually at the landfills to try to reduce the waste and trash that are in the landfills? I know landfills are a beast of their own, but you know that.
Yeah, I mean, I you know, as being the lead feedstock sourcer, I sometimes dream about being able to go into landfills and pull the plastics out because it would make my job easier. But no, I mean, we really haven't looked at that. I know that there are some who are looking at mining landfills, but that is not. That's. We would, again, I keep saying the market, but like, I mean, we will need suppliers who, you know, technology suppliers and, you know, who can go in and mine that, you know, plastic rich, you know, landfill fields. But we can only go so far, right? I mean, we're trying to set up the threshold to say, hey, okay, if we can get this spec, this business model works. But as soon as we start going deeper into like things like mining a landfill, you know, it could alter those economics, and so we need to know how far we can go. And for right now, the answer is no. Yeah.
All right. let's say thank you to JL and Tom. Appreciate it, guys.
Just a quick
Thanks,
little
thanks Dave and
closing-
Tim for lining up the video.
Yeah, just a quick little closing comments. 5 years ago, we talked about, if some of you that were here, and there's a few that were here 5 years ago, we talked about the possibility of bringing in pyrolysis and various conversion technologies like what JL's doing into the mix. And at the time, the speakers that we brought on was all, pilot project type things, or they had some facility overseas or this idea. This is the cool part. This is the cool part where you're actually starting to see that take place. And I think as a nation, we're going to see more and more of this type of technology come to fruition. So I love it. Thank you. It is beer time. Let's go next door. Thank you, gentlemen.